Hello guys, Braxcast time once again, and this is the 61st episode of the Braxcast, and we've got a good bit to talk about. Very exciting things, of course. I'm still doing Braxcast live. Last episode was really good one, especially on Good Friday. I had NDA Andrew and Edwin Boyette talking with me, along with a lot of great chat about the Rippazine, the third issue of the Rippazine, which is what we're going to get into. But before we get into that, there's of course some news I want to get out of the way before we go all about the Rippazine. The first thing being the Dallas Fan Expo. I believe they did this Denver Fan Expo and Dallas Fan Expo last year, and they're doing the Dallas Fan Expo again this year, May 30th to June 1st, booth CM1. So if you're going to be there, that's where you ought to be. I won't be going to this one, but hopefully it's a good event for the fans, and we might even get a cool announcement then. But with the way the release schedule has been going, I don't think the conventions really matter, because they're just dropping stuff left and right. And one of those things that's being dropped is, of course, the Yaira number 3 collection is being launched on the 21st of April. So that's this coming Monday, if you're watching this on Saturday or Easter Sunday. Hopefully you guys are having a good Easter weekend, because he is risen, right? That is what we say. But anyway, back to the news. Yaira number 3 is launching on Monday. So absolutely fantastic. Of course, we just got Yaira number 2, and at the end of Yaira number 2, it says Yaira number 3 is coming later this year. Later this year means before June, apparently. So not even halfway through the year, we're already getting the collection for Yaira number 3, and we're probably going to get Yaira number 3 before the summer is even over. Very exciting to see. And it's going to be really cool to get this book, especially with how much of a cliffhanger is left with Yaira number, or the cliffhanger that Yaira number 2 ends on, and the amount of stuff that's going on in the general story of Yaira that we really need Yaira 3 to clarify and explain things. And it's going to be sooner rather than later in this year that we're getting Yaira number 3. So it's going to be very exciting. Of course, that's what we'll be talking about next week. But what we have to talk about this week is, of course, the Rippazine. So this is the regular Rippazine. This is, of course, the collector's edition. Very nice foiled and embossed collector's edition. This is, of course, really heavily featuring the Dirty Deeds short story by Carol Brown and Evan Scale. And of course, we're going to get into that. We've got the collectors, or I should say the CGC slabs here. Always a little bit hard for me to show them off, but you got a 9.8 here. The Rippazine continues to be a passion for us here at the Rippaverse. We pitched this project as something for the fans, and that's what we endeavor to continue for many years to come. The keen-eyed, observant fan can always come to find a few hints, nuggets of lore, not explicitly stated elsewhere in Easter eggs amidst the words of various characters whose colorful personalities contribute to the contents packed inside these pages. But yes, it does leave them to try out new stuff, which is definitely Dirty Deeds. It's definitely a departure from what's normally done at the Rippaverse. So that is the 9.8 regular edition. This is, of course, the collector's slab, and both of these are signed by Carol Brown. Very neatly, I say. That's probably the best signature I've seen, or at least the neatest signature I've seen of anybody's graded slabs. But this is, of course, the foiled and embossed, which has the first appearance of Arad, Beetles, Felsar, Rinland, Spingy, and Solia. Those are all the characters that appear in Dirty Deeds for the most part, although since it's such a short story, they're not all necessarily named. But this is an absolutely beautiful foiled and embossed cover. All of the foil covers for the Rippaverse have been top-notch, and I believe this is the first Rippazine that has had a foil cover. I think it's very fitting. But with all of that out of the way, we've got the signature series, the collector's editions, all of that. Let's actually get into the content itself. So we've got the regular one here. This is my reading copy. We got the inside back cover showing off this really nice collector's edition cover that Kanan White did that really shows off Dirty Deeds, of course. And now we've got a little letter from Eric July, basically saying the same, I'm not saying the same stuff, but very much the same message that's at the beginning of every Rippazine, that very thankful for the fans. Lets them try out new stuff. Absolutely fantastic to see this letter from the editor. Always love that they begin with that. Then we get into the basic credits, and then we've got the table of contents, which is organized. This is definitely organized by page count. So, so it's 4 or 5, and then you've got the Flores Park Gazette and the Rippaverse previews. And of course, you've got the front cover, or the main cover, as that art there. Now we start into what I think is part of the most interesting things, is catch and kill. So we've got some pretty good lore here. We've got, who is that man that Mick Davies has been meeting with after hours, dirty cop or some kind of dirty secret? Maybe that's Hector, the horseman. We got a chain of mob bosses is plaguing our fair city. Sources say the methods used are baffling the local PD. And you got more stuff like this. Absolutely fantastic. We don't know who Adam Van House is up to these days. Something is brewing at Van House Industries, the bioengineering and technological powerhouse. What is Adam Van House up to these days? It could be something that gets mentioned in Ice and Free. It could be something that gets mentioned in an upcoming Gooding book. Of course, we've got Delta Force. We've got something with the SSWL's resident superstar, Larry Shungite, has gone off book recently, challenging the company for not respecting his worth. Is this part of the show or something more personal? And then you've got more stuff like this. Don't necessarily want to read everything in the interest of time. But we do have the third bird's eye view, and this is probably what I would say is the worst part of the Rippazine. This is kind of just pushed into here. And when I was I was talking with Andrew on live stream yesterday, he mentioned that adding more stuff to Rippazine would be nice, but they have to keep the page count in mind, because this is supposed to be cheap. This is supposed to be under $10 without shipping to get it. And if you want to have that, you want to have that price point and be profitable, you can only have so many pages. Especially these pages are not thin, typical print pages. They're, thick, substantial, like any sort of comic book page would be. And speaking of comic book pages, we've got 16 of them in this Rippazine. This is the short story Dirty Deeds by Carol Brown, written by Carol Brown, artist Evan Scale, colored by Marco Lesko, and lettered by Invisible Art Studios, with Andrew Rodriguez editing the story. And this is a fantastic short story. So this is basically about a ragtag group of sci-fi heroes, or not say sci-fi heroes, but a ragtag group of science fiction, I'd say, people, if that's the way to put it. You've got like mercenaries. Of course, you've got Spingy, who's like a arachno-humanoid. You've got this telepathic girl. I believe her name would be Rinlin, if I'm saying that, either Rinlin or Sulia. The names of these characters isn't the most explicit, and this is one of the things, that there's a lot of characterization and world building that Carol clearly has in mind for Dirty Deeds, and that's not necessarily exemplified in the 16-page short story, because there's just so little time that happens, and the bigger focus is on this overarching plot where they're stealing this cargo, and then we have the Beatles show up, and then it's just fighting against those Beatles, and then getting that resolution there. And that main overarching plot line is done really well. And of course, Evan Scale's art is fantastic, and Marco Lesko's colors really makes it pop. This is probably some of the best art I've seen out of the Rippaverse in general. And this really stands alongside basically any of the art of the other two Rippazine short stories in Salvage, and even Saoirse with Kane and White doing those interiors. Absolutely fantastic art to see. I love this style. I absolutely love this story. Around the middle is where the pacing can get a bit can be a bit of an issue, because like I said, there's just so much that goes on. It's kind of hard to wrap your head around everything, and there's clearly a lot of character, so there isn't really much, if any, characterization that goes on in this book, and it kind of makes it hard to understand and get invested in these characters and think of the Dirty Deeds crew as this tight-knit crew that have their own strengths and weaknesses that play off of each other. I think there's a little bit of that that's shown throughout that, but most of this is just this overarching plot line. And I do absolutely love the story here. But really what I want, and I said this on live stream and I'll say this again, is about 250 to 300 pages worth of Dirty Deeds split across 3 or 4 issues of a limited series, with of course having the same team working on that book. But that's really my overview of Dirty Deeds. It's a fantastic short story, but it definitely suffers a little bit from being only 16 pages because there is a lot of story that Carol wants to tell, and she was able to tell a complete story in those 16 pages, more so than the first 2 issues of the Rippazine, where Salvage and Saoirse are just snippets of a larger story. This is just a really short story. It's a complete story. It's very short, but of course it's setting up a continuation, as you see. I'm not sure if you can see here, but it does say to be continued at the end of the last panel. It does say to be continued, so there definitely are places where this story can be taken. Hopefully they do that, and hopefully they tie this in with other stuff with the Rippaverse. Of course, the Beatles and the Void Scarabs being tied into Magus New. The Beatles being part of the Void Scarabs and tied into Magus Newmite on that basis is a very likely thing, and I absolutely would love to see that. But there is just a lot going on in Dirty Deeds, but it is really nice. It's a fun reading experience. It's a complete story, and the art is fantastic. I think Carol structured it well for the page count that she had, and I can definitely see this slotting in pretty well to the cosmic and science fiction aspects of the Rippaverse, which really we don't have much. Dirty Deeds is the only thing we have on hand, and of course Dalen is upcoming. That collection is still ongoing, and I believe that's around over $150,000, so it's doing pretty well. Fans, of course, want that. And having more science fiction is going to be a really cool thing to see, and I think Dirty Deeds is going to be a really good avenue, which is why I said a limited series for Dirty Deeds is something that is definitely in order. And from the responses I've seen of the fan base so far, the people who've gotten it, it's been basically very positive. From people who have gotten Dirty Deeds and gotten the third Rippazine and read Dirty Deeds, is that it's very positive, and there's only minor criticisms, and I think most of them come from, like I said, it being 16 pages and it being a little bit hard to wrap your head around all that's going on in those 16 pages, and there not being another 10 or so pages, or even like 20 or 30 to really establish some good world building and characterization that give you that context that you need. And then what we've got is Lillian's Hot Tea. This is again just more lore of the Rippaverse. So we've got the Lillian's Hot Tea and the Gentleman's Tips from Michael's Gentleman Tips. These are, I believe, written by Jen and Sylvia respectively. They have an absolute field day doing these, and I believe this is the cover for The Cursed, and this is the cover for the Black-Eyed Club. Those are, of course, the 2 solo books that are going to be coming out at some point this year that really give us the story of these 2 characters. But what we do get here is not only an insight to the personality of Lillian and the personality of Michael, right? But you've got also a little bit of world building for the general Rippaverse, especially in Lillian's Hot Tea. Not so much Michael's Gentleman's Tips. Michael's Gentleman's Tip is just like, here's how to be a playboy. Never apologize. Money buys happiness. Feel nothing, which I'll comment on this. So this is getting at the Stoic way of viewing things, and I've read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, one of the Stoic philosophers, and the way he goes about this is, I think, a bit misguided. You can have your feelings, you're allowed to feel them, you can't let them get to you, and you can't do anything solely because of your feelings, and you have to go with the mindset that people are going to wrong you, and people are going to do stuff that benefits you and benefits them and is a detriment to you, and you just have to have that as a presupposition in your life, and you have to just accept that for what it is. And you can also accept that everything in your life is your own fault, and everything that happens to you in your life is your own fault and your own responsibility. So it really starts and ends with you, and that is really where your focus really ought to be, instead of letting your emotions control you and letting your emotional reactions be the way your life is dictated. But that's my very bad ramble on Stoic philosophy. But to get into Lillian's Hot Tea, because this is what I think is the more interesting thing for the fans of the Rippaverse, because she really goes into a lot of the other characters because that's her hot tea. So we've got the Horseman being a hero. Hardly word around town is he's responsible for the death of 2 cops. Maybe he should join the Alpha Corps. They let their own die all the time. We've got this one, which I think is really interesting. Copper Records has continued to sign the top talent in the music industry, and every band and artist to join this label has been catapulted straight to the top. Only the best of the best makes it in. I wonder why Norfolk has not signed a lucrative deal with them. Perhaps they are allergic to success or have something to hide. Certainly quite interesting. And of course, there are some references to other comic books. Alpha Core #1 and Yaira #1. There are events that take place in those books that Lillian mentions. And I could get Yaira 1 and Alpha Core #1 and show you those events. But I think the fun in this is reading this and finding out for yourself. And I try not on these pre-recorded episodes to get too much into the spoiler talk, although definitely is something I could do in the future. But this is just an overview of the Rippazine. Of course, we've got Harriet's Kitchen, Harriet Silman, of course, being the mother of Avery and Silman, and of course Altona Daniels. This is a nice little apple pie recipe. Guys, ever want me to do any of the recipes, comment, and that's definitely something I will consider doing. And this has a homemade crust, so a lot of you can make pies. You can get pizza crust, apple pie dough from the store. That's typically pastry dough. But this gives you a recipe on how to make it completely from scratch, filling and dough as well, which is a really cool thing to see. And then, of course, this ends off with the preview. So we've got our preview for Blood Roof #1. Absolutely fantastic to see these previews. We got a preview for Yaira #2. And of course, these books are already available to the reader base. And you've got Great War Separation #1, which is, of course, available to the reader base as well. Doesn't have the map, though. It just starts with before the map. So the first page of the Great War Separation has that map. It's a little bit of a missed opportunity to put that map. So it's that map that appears there. But then we've got what I think is really the most exciting thing for fans. Hardcore fans like me, is a preview of Isom Ill-Advised Part 3. So the 3rd issue of Isom is featured in this book. Of course, the massive 144-pager. And this was, I would say, other than Dirty Deeds, what I was most excited to read out of the Rippazine. Certainly was not disappointed with this preview. Only disappointment I have is that you get to the end of it and you just want the rest of the book. So hopefully they can get us that book soon. And then we can get to find out the end of the Ill-Advised arc. But this is a fantastic issue of the 3rd of the Rippazine. 3rd issue of the Rippazine, absolutely fantastic. Only criticism I have of it is that the bird's eye view could have been printed a little bit better, but then to do that, you probably would have had to have an extra page, which is a bit understandable if you want to keep the page count to a certain minimum length. And of course, you can't add just one more page; you would have to add like 2 or 4 more because that's the way print files work. So it's understandable how they did things. Other than that, absolutely fantastic. Really nice to see the previews. Lillian's hot tea, Michael Copper's gentleman tips. Absolutely love to see that. And of course, Dirty Deeds was a fantastic short story. We definitely need more of that. A really good first showing of the hardcore science fiction that takes place outside of Earth for the Rippaverse, and hopefully you get more of that. Especially, we are going to get more of that on the cosmic side with Zalin. But I think the kind of science fiction that's offered in Dirty Deeds is something that is missing from the Rippaverse, and we definitely have the enthusiasm for a graphic novel, definitely, but I think a limited series. That's like I said this a couple of times, and I'll reiterate it again. 250 to 300 pages split across about 3 or 4 issues would be a really good thing for Dirty Deeds to get. Hopefully that's what happens. But until then, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode of the Braxcast. Joker is out. Thank you for tuning in to the Braxcast. Be sure to like, comment, follow, and subscribe to keep up with the Rippaverse.